Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for our Reducing Send Button Anxiety webinar. Our goal for the day is that you will be able to walk away with a set of concrete actions that allow you to ensure your email both makes it to the inbox and is flawless when it does. What we're planning to do today is work our way pretty quickly through the presentation and then allow plenty of time at the end for questions and answers. Since there are more than 400, actually over 500 people that registered for this webinar today, and it looks like we've got a little over 200 people joining us already, we ask that you type any questions that you have into the chat box, and we'll work to answer them during the Q&A portion of our presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to begin by introducing our presenters for today. First off, we have Al Bashara, the CEO and co-founder of Email Copilot. We also have Jeff Phillips, the senior email developer and specialist at Email on Acid. And then myself, I'm Tanya Wheeler-Berliner, the senior marketing manager for Email on Acid. And before we completely jump in and get started here, I just wanted to introduce both of our companies that are bringing you this presentation today and let each of us tell you just a little bit about what it is that we do. So I'd love to start with you, Al. If you could introduce Email Copilot and give us just a short summary of what it is that you all do.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tanya. So the description here is pretty accurate. Email Copilot provides real-time problem identification, root cause analysis, and quick solutions for any kind of email delivery issues you might encounter. The shorter way to look at this is we identify when you've got a problem, we identify why you've got that problem, and what you need to do to fix that problem, and we do all that in real time.
That's great. Thanks, Al. And Email on Acid, we're a company that provide a suite of pre-deployment testing tools and post-deployment email analytics to help you improve your email marketing efforts. So again, the description on screen is pretty accurate as well. We do email testing, troubleshooting, and also help you track those emails that you send out so you know what's going on and can continue to improve your efforts. So as we get started today, we've divided our presentation into pre-send and post-send checks, and we're going to start out with the pre-send checks. So if we know anything about email, we know that creating email campaigns can be really difficult. I know personally, I've been there. You work for days or even weeks to pull together your copy, your creative, to get all of the sign-offs that you need. You arrange everything so it's perfect. And then with a knot in your stomach and a trembling hand, you finally schedule your email for delivery, right? You all who are here on this webinar with us today have probably had a few campaigns where either a few minutes before your email is set to deploy, you run into your ESP, you put your campaign on hold, you go back, you double check everything one last time, or on the flip side of that coin, you see that email arrive in your inbox and you dread actually opening it and looking at it one last time because it's already been sent, and if there are any issues with it, you can't do anything at this point. If the email creation process is difficult, being heard through the noise and noticed in the inbox is even more difficult. It's estimated that there are 93 billion marketing emails that are sent every day. You have approximately 8 seconds to make an impression, and 70% of smartphone users have said that they will immediately delete an email that they can't read. However, email has also been shown to have a greater ROI than all other marketing channels combined. In fact, the latest estimates are that for every dollar you spend on email marketing, you earn approximately $38 of revenue. It's just really incredible when you think about it. But why is it that email is so difficult, other than needing to check and double check things from the very basics? Unlike the web, many email clients lack support for modern CSS and HTML code. So we also know that desktops, laptops, smartphones, tablets, people are reading email all over everywhere and all kinds of different email clients and devices, and different screen sizes handle code differently. We also know that your email service provider, your ESP, may modify your code a little bit before you send it out. And some web clients strip or modify your code in pre-processing. So Gmail is an offender here. They tend to strip out media queries and only read inline code or code that has been inline, so it can be very difficult. And finally, Outlook, our favorite or perhaps least favorite client in email development, uses Word as its rendering engine, and so it makes it really difficult for things to display properly in Outlook. Many of you may be nodding your heads at this point in agreement. You have experienced issues with Outlook and you know what I'm talking about. So in the email development process, you push send and your email goes out into the world and lands in all of these places that you're seeing on screen and many, many more places. So we're going to have Jeff walk us through here a quick visual representation of what's happening just with the code of your email so you get a better understanding of what's going on behind the scenes and possibly causing some of those issues. Jeff?
So here we have an example of some beautiful email code. You can see it has lots of nice line breaks. It's all tabbed out so you can see where everything begins and ends, and it's very easy to read. So then you take that and you're going to put that in your ESP and you're going to go ahead and send it out. So your ESP might do something like this. It's pretty common to have it take out all the line breaks. Sending programs just do that. I'm not sure if it makes it easier. Then once it's sent out, the receiving program may also modify it. So for example, Outlook, it's going to take it and it's going to say that it can only have so many characters on each line. In order to do that, it needs to add a line break somewhere. If that line break happens to be in the middle of one of your tags, it could break just that element of the email, or it could break that and everything that follows, pretty much completely destroying what the email should look like for your customers. This is why you need to test before you send so that you can make sure from your ESP it's going to look like what you really want it to look like.
So if you know that there are potential problems or potential pitfalls, how is it that you're able to identify these problems before you send your emails to eliminate stress, embarrassment, and potentially, like Jeff talked about, complete email failure? Let's walk through it. We've got an example of an email here. It's a beautiful cat email. Everyone on the internet seems to love cats, so we thought we would demo with a lovely cat email. And if you're able to see as well, we don't have typical lorem ipsum in our cat email. We've got meat-themed lorem ipsum with bacon and many other things. So we've got this beautiful email that we've created, and you're ready to test it. Many of you are currently testing with these guys. Who are these guys? These are your coworkers. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with the process of sending out your test email to your coworkers so they can check it on their different devices. Someone may have an Android phone or an iPhone. Perhaps someone opens it in Gmail or Yahoo or whatever. So you send out your emails to your coworkers to review. Billy, this guy down here in the front, who's extremely happy about getting your email, you've asked Billy to review it, and maybe he has the right version of Outlook to see where your email breaks, but then again, maybe he doesn't have the right version of Outlook, and so he doesn't see your email breaking. In addition, you've asked Billy to please go through and check all of the links that are in your email to make sure that all of them go to the correct place. And Billy gets distracted. Someone wants to chat with him while he's going through your email, and he misses a couple of links. So Billy sends you back a response saying that everything looks good in your email, and you think you're good to go. You've had your coworkers check it and double check it. You think all of your links are working, and you send out an email and then find out it breaks. An alternative testing option to using your coworkers and relying on Billy is to use a service like Email on Acid that allows you to send a test email from your email service provider through our system and then see your results for more than 40 email clients and mobile devices in minutes. And you don't have to run tests in every single client. Maybe Apple Mail 7 or Lotus Notes just aren't that important to you, which isn't an issue. You can change your default client settings at any time. So once you've run a test, you can quickly look through your results to identify any problems. Like this one here. There's something going on in Outlook 2013, And it looks like my pretty pink border on my hero image, my cat hero image, disappeared along with my rounded corners. So let's talk about how you can fix the problems that you find. Jeff's going to walk us through that.
So you begin testing, as Tanya did, and you see an issue with your email, such as those missing corners. Your first step is that you want to go into code analysis and take a look to see if we've highlighted anything. We've built this system so that it goes through your code and it will highlight individual issues based on that client. So the issues that you see highlighted here are specific to Outlook 2013. So we can see over on the bottom right, it says border attribute is not supported in image tags, which is why we're not seeing our pink border. If we could scroll down a little bit, we would also see that rounded corners are not supported, which is why we're not seeing those either. Now we want to be able to fix these issues, so we're going to go ahead and move to tips and tricks. This is an FAQ style feature that lists a bunch of common questions that people have about specific email clients. So all of these are about Outlook 2013 and how to fix them. So we can see down towards the bottom, why don't I see rounded corners? So if we click on that, it's going to open up and we're going to see that the CSS property border radius and its WebKit counterpart don't work in Outlook 2013. So if you want to have rounded corners in every single client, they just aren't supported in Outlook 2013 through CSS. That's why I would recommend saving the image with the rounded corners and the pink border as part of the image itself. That way it will look the same everywhere.
In addition to code analysis and tips and tricks, Email on Acid has a blog where we have spent years documenting issues and solutions to your email problems. We've also published a number of white papers and guides that will help to simplify your testing and troubleshooting process. And these guys, your colleagues, we certainly understand that email is a collaborative process and that you may need to involve your colleagues in your QA process. You likely need to get some sign-offs. You might need people to be able to look at images and approve them or edit your copy. And so we have a tool just for that. It's called our Markup Tool. Our Markup Tool allows you to share your test results with your colleagues through a link. Then they can come into the system without having to log in and draw and comment on your emails, just like right here, to note any issues that need to be resolved or edits that need to be made. Those can then be saved, and on the dashboard, you've got an easy little message where you can see where things have been marked on and can go in and address each of those issues. So you're not collecting multiple email responses from different colleagues and trying to checklist and make sure you get all of those things answered. You can do that all within our system. In addition to that, we have a link validation tool. So you don't have to rely on Billy anymore, who gets super distracted, to check all of your links. You can come in and use this URL validation tool, and you can see right down here, we've got an issue. It looks like somebody left a placeholder URL in, and so that's not going to work when we send out our email. But we've got an easy way to find that. It's really quick. You can also see in a design view here if images aren't working or if the links aren't working, so you can fix those things quickly without having to rely on others or waste a lot of time sending yourself a test that then you have to click every single link in your test email to be able to make sure that all of your links are working. This will save you quite a bit of time in your email production process. Finally, I'm going to hand it back over to Jeff, and he's going to talk just a little bit about our pre-send spam testing process.
All right, so you've done your email preview testing to make sure it looks right, and you've done your URL validation to make sure all of your links are correct, and now you're going to want to do some spam testing to make sure that your deliverability will be where you want it to. So we have 3 different testing options here: Seedless, SMTP server, and letting Email on Acid send your spam test results. So the Seedless is the most accurate because it's going to test your ESP's reputation, because you're sending it directly from your ESP to this list of addresses. So once we get the test sent out, then we're going to start to see results come in. And you can see here's our email, cats, and we have deliverability broken down into business to business, business to customer, and overall deliverability. For each filter, we're going to let you know if it passed the filter or if it failed the filter and was marked as spam. And if we possibly can, we're going to give you some feedback on it. So in this example, we have a few failures here, and we want to identify what's causing those issues. So it might tell you in the feedback for it, but if it doesn't, you'll want to do some testing to see if it's a content issue or a reputation issue. So test 1 was a seedless test, and we sent our email campaign, which we're going to call email A, and we failed 2 filters. Now we're going to want to run a second test, and we're going to test via email on ACID. We maintain excellent server reputation so that you know that any deliverability issues are not caused by reputation. They would be caused by content if there's an issue. So we send out email A again, exact same content, no changes, and we fail 0 filters. This indicates that there is a reputation issue with your ESP because with the exact same content, only the third party failed. Now, if on the other hand, you found that you failed the exact same number of filters, that would indicate a content problem because it doesn't matter the reputation of the servers, the content caused you to fail. So we're going to run another test, and we call this black box testing because you don't always know exactly what the spam filter is doing. They keep that a secret so that spammers can't circumvent their filters. So we run the test, it goes through the black box, and you're going to get your results back. Hopefully you had a success and everything was great and you're done testing. But if you should have a failure, then you're going to want to tweak your content to try and see if you can identify anything that seems sort of spammy, dollar symbols in the subject line or using the word free a lot or any of the other big indicators. See if you can change those phrases around and then run another test and check your results again, and hopefully you will eventually reach your success point. And then once you've completed that testing, now you've done everything you need for pre-send testing. You've got your renderability, you've got your link check, and then you've got your spam testing.
Thanks, Jeff. Now we're going to turn it over to Al to talk about post-send issues and what you can do to prevent or remedy them. Al?
Awesome, thanks. Okay, so you've clicked the send button. Well, now what? Sure, you can get open and click stats, but what's that really telling you? We all stress over what ISPs like Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook.com, and the 1,000 other mailbox providers are doing with our emails. Are they delivering them? Are they in a spam folder? Are they disappearing? We're here to talk about how to watch for those details and learn what's actually going on behind the scenes. So the first step is how to identify that you have a real problem. And there are a pile of things that can go wrong that can cause your email to get blocked. There are deferrals. There's bounces. You could end up in the spam folder. You might be on a blacklist. Or one of many of your authentication policies might be wrong or invalid. And then, how are your users engaging with your emails? Are they opening and clicking? Are they clicking the spam button or unsubscribing? All of these things change and trend over time, and really you need a system that's going to not just look for dramatic changes, but also the subtle changes over time that can really kind of get lost in the noise. So for the sake of time here, out of these 12 things to watch, and there's plenty more, we're going to take a deeper look at one of them, which is bounces, kind of everybody's favorite. First of all, did you know that there are around 100 different official ways that an email can bounce? It's not just the standard mailbox full or mailbox doesn't exist. In the many decades that email's been around, the protocol and usage of these codes has changed substantially. It's a little bit messy, but what I want to do, I want to show a few examples of what these bounces actually look like. So this first one is a good example. It's nice and clean, and if we break it down, there's an old code from the original protocol way back in 1982. This one says the transaction failed. Fair enough. There's a new code, which is from around the mid-90s, and this one says delivery not authorized. So there's a little more detail there. And then finally, the description is really clear and concise. Now, some of you may have no idea what this means, and that's okay because we do, and we know exactly what to do to fix a problem like this if we see it buried within millions of rows of your data. So the next one we're going to look at, it's a little weird, which we see our share of strange ones, but it's still valuable. So it's screaming, attention, spam assassin. It's kind of funny. You'll see the original code is there, which actually means mailbox unavailable. The new code is missing. And while the message is kind of awkward, it tells us quite a bit about what's happening, even though the error code is kind of wrong, or at least inaccurate. Understand that every ISP out there can put whatever text in these messages they want. And in many cases, it's really, really important to analyze this context because the error codes can often be wrong. Okay, so let's look at kind of a bad one. This one here, this code is not even real. It doesn't exist. This one is about as generic as it can get. And it appears that this might be part of an IP address or a range of addresses. Either way, to most folks, this is a pretty useless bit of information unless you dig in and start to categorize these things correctly, which is a big part of what our system does. All right, so the last bunch here, and really I just included these because honestly they're kind of funny. First one, error, blame it on the weather. Next one is you've used inappropriate words, please make better choices in the future. And then did you do these technical things? I don't think you did. And who says technical folks don't have a sense of humor? So anyway, moving on. Ultimately, the point here is to show how complex this can be just for bounces, let alone the other items that all need to be watched so that you can make sure that you actually get to the inbox. Okay, so you now know you have a problem, but why do you have that problem? So this is a real-world example from a customer's opening clicks over a month or two. And these happen to be transactional emails that weren't even marketing emails. So let's break it into chunks here. On the left side, it's pretty jagged, a lot of dramatic drops and increases. The middle seems to have a general dip in opens. And the right side, which is after the fix, is really nice and smoothed out. So what was going on here? Well, this customer wasn't actually on board with us until around June 6th. And prior to that, they were getting calls from customers complaining that notification emails weren't being delivered, et cetera. And on May 17th, when the dip happened, these complaints got a lot worse. So they spent weeks trying to figure out what was wrong, but didn't have the ability to analyze the data that they had to make sense of it. So they gave us a call, and literally within a pretty short period of time, we started having a good idea of what was happening. And within the bounce codes, we actually saw authentication failures related to their SPF record. And when we checked the SPF record itself, we actually found a typo, a really simple typo. And again, showing the complexities of bounce codes, these are some examples of SPF bounce messages, but only one of them is actually using a code that kind of applies to an authentication failure. So you do have to dig in and analyze that text. So for fun, let's break down this issue by ISP and see how each of them responded to this SPF typo. First up is Yahoo. So you can see it's a little spiky before the fix. You can really see it in the clicks down in blue below. And after the fix, everything really smoothed out. Next is Outlook.com, all the Microsoft properties like Hotmail, Live, et cetera. And clearly we can see where some of the spikiness came from. It's almost like the customer was sitting on some kind of a we like you, we don't like you threshold over at Outlook. And then once the fix was in place, things smoothed out. And finally on Gmail, wow, huge drop in opens from almost 40% to around 15%. Soon after it was fixed, it bounced back up to 30%, and eventually over about a 2-week period of time, it grew back to that 40% where it started. Right, so we know we have a problem. We know why we have a problem. So what do we do to fix it? I think the best approach here is to show a few examples from our application itself. We can see a few things about this particular customer. First of all, they're sending a pretty sizable amount of emails. And over the past few days, they've had some alerts. Now, green are resolved. Gray are minor alerts, and thankfully these guys don't have any red alerts right now, which are critical. What we're going to do is I'm going to click through to 2 of these alerts so we can see what's going on. The first one is the high bounce rate on top. Upon clicking, you get some context, what happened, how many emails, what it means, and some reading material to help you learn if you want. Scrolling down, at quick glance, we can see the orange bounce bar is really high for Earthlink, so it appears there's something going on with that ISP. A little further down, we get the bounce summaries, content issues, blocks at Earthlink, etc. And clicking through gives you a link for Earthlink to resolve. So you can go to this spot, look at your content, make sure you get things cleaned up, go to this link to get removed from that block. The second problem we're going to focus on is the high deferral rate. Again, some contextual information to get you started. Then we scroll into some detail. And also you can see Comcast is blocking here, and it's something that we should look at, but we're really focused on the green deferrals right now. And it looks like we're getting hit pretty consistently. And digging into the data, you can see that Yahoo is providing the most information, and it's really focused around user complaints. And again, clicking through shows some links on how to resolve this at Yahoo once you take care of your content-based issues. Soon within the interface, you'll actually be able to see which subject lines, which campaigns, which tags, if you're using them, are causing these problems. Maybe even showing you that, hey, stage 3 of your welcome sequence is the root cause of the bounces that we're getting. Ultimately, our goal is to make it as simple as possible to pinpoint where the trouble is and give you the information that you need to quickly resolve it. So that summarizes most of that. I do want to give you a little teaser, something that we're working on right now. Ultimately, we're building business intelligence and real-time data visualization for email. Now, off to the right, you should start to see some animations. And this isn't real email data, by the way. It's just a mock-up. But I want you to see how the graphs dynamically change. As email is flowing, as opens, as clicks, as bounces are happening, these charts will update in real time. So imagine clicking the send button and being able to see what's happening on the fly. You can, of course, filter and watch the entire screen update. There's even DVR playback controls. So you can go back in time and watch it again and even increase the speed so you can quickly watch a longer period of time in a short window. So it's pretty cool stuff. Anyway, that wraps it up for us here. I think Tanya's been tracking some of your questions, so I think we're going to start answering those now.
Thanks, Al. That was pretty cool, watching that real-time work there. So I have been tracking some of the questions here, and we're going to jump into Q&A. But remember, if you have any questions, please go ahead and type those into the chat box, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can here while we still have time on the webinar. Let's start out. It looks like the first question says, for the spam testing feature, we paste in the actual customer emails. If so, are their emails actually going out to those email addresses? Raymond, thank you for your question. Jeff, I think I'm going to hand this one over to you to answer.
Hi, Raymond. No, you wouldn't want to use customer emails. We provide a custom-made seed list of special email addresses that we monitor. Then we'll see if your email campaign passes those filters or not, and let you know the results on the test results page.
Thanks, Jeff. So Raymond, let us know if that answers your question or if you have any follow-up questions there. The next question we have here says, if people have identified your email with the spam button or into the spam filter perhaps, and this has affected your reputation, i.e. Google, how long does it take to rectify this problem? Heidi, thanks for your question. I'm going to kick that one over to you, Al.
Sure. So honestly, I think it really depends. Like the SPF example from today, most ISPs can come right back to normal after a fix like that one. Even so, Gmail took another couple of weeks to fully ramp things back to normal. All that said, this was a technical glitch, not necessarily a true reputation issue. We've seen reputation, restoration, so to speak, take anywhere from days to weeks or two to even a month or sometimes a little more. It really just depends on how bad the reputation was. And I think, I would guess it depends on how long the reputation has been bad, but I can't say that for sure. That's a little more speculation.
Thanks, Al. All right, on to our next question. This one is from Lydia. Lydia says, for the spam testing, do the emails need to be sent at one time? I'd need to add the emails to our database and send all at once, or would I need to send the tests at one time? Lydia, are you still there? Can you tell us if you're talking about the Seedless? Okay, so it looks like Lydia is talking about the seedless. All right, Jeff, I'll kick this one over to you. Can you answer this question?
Well, the emails need to have the same sender address, sender name, content, and subject. It shouldn't matter if they are all sent simultaneously or not. Actually, if a filter doesn't give you a pass-fail, you can resend and it should populate the result for that filter.
Thanks, Jeff. Lydia, let us know if that answered your question. The next question we've got here says, have you ever had any issues with newsletters being blacklisted in Yahoo Mail? If so, how did you go about resolving them? Question comes first from Stephen. Stephen, thanks for your question. Al, can you take this one?
Sure. Yeah, of course, we see issues with Yahoo all the time. Sometimes an ISP like Yahoo will tell us, exactly what kind of blacklist it's on or what is actually happening and why they're blocked. If that's the case, we know the purpose of each blacklist. We can identify based on the context, if they're looking for links in an email or if there's some context issue or some other reason. But as you probably know, mailbox providers don't always provide complete information. But even if they don't give us information directly, odds are we're going to see these problems show up somewhere else, which is why it's really important to look at all the data. Resolution really just, you asked how do you resolve it. It really just kind of depends on the issue. Sometimes it's clear cut and we provide a link to fill out a form or something. Other times it's more nuanced and we'll dive in with you to help dig in and see what's going on. If it's not something that we can just automatically say, hey, here's the problem and the solution.
Thanks, Al. So the next question we have here says, hi, is target blank something to avoid? When I used Campaigner, they had a policy not to use it, but now I'm coding emails that go out through a proprietary system. All right, Michelle, thank you for your question. Jeff, is this something you feel like you can answer?
Yeah, as far as I know, that shouldn't have a negative effect on deliverability. I think it's a pretty common attribute to use. If you really want to be sure, I would recommend sending 2 tests to our spam testing system, one with your links with target equals blank, and the other without that attribute. Just leave everything else the same. In this way, you can reduce the variables and test for just one element's effect on deliverability.
That makes sense. All right. Looks like we have several more questions here, and continue to type in your questions into the chat box as you have those. This one says, our next question says, question for Email Copilot. As a marketer, how does it work with the ESP? Does Email Copilot get the logs systematically, analyze them, and provide reports? So Al, we'll let you take that one.
Yeah, great question. I don't think I covered this. It literally takes about 3 minutes for us to connect with your ESP. The exact method varies, but essentially you create some kind of secret key at your ESP that you plug into our interface, and at that point we have access to all the data that we need. It's really super easy to get set up and started.
Nice. Our next question here says, do you have general thoughts, recommendations, or best practices for including images in your email sends with more and more auto-blocking of images? Looks like Dan had a follow-up too that said with 70% of users deleting emails that don't render, it seems like that could sometimes be counterproductive. Jeff, can you give us a little insight here?
Well, actually, less and less email clients are auto-blocking images. Gmail, for example, recently started serving proxy images and now has images enabled by default. If you're worried about image blocking, I would recommend including the primary message of your email as text instead of as an image. That way they'll see it as soon as they open the email, regardless of image blocking. You can also try our Modify tool, which lets you replace your images with styled text. This is especially useful for bulletproof buttons.
Very nice. All right, our next question here. Have you ever had the issue that the recipient didn't receive the email, but the ESP shows no indication that the email bounced? Al, I think this one's definitely in your court, so we'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, sure. It does happen. I don't know if I'd call it common, but it's certainly an issue. And, a lot of the ESPs are keeping some of their cards to their chest, which makes sense for them to do. Again, I think the beauty of this situation is that we're seeing data from thousands of mailbox providers, and not all of them are going to react the same way. So if one is being quiet about a certain bounce, there are surely others that are not. And from there, we can infer what's happening. Usually, if the major guys are being quiet, they're probably pretty concerned about the quality of your send, but that kind of issue is going to manifest itself elsewhere through blacklists or blocks from other ISPs or other things like that.
Thanks, Al. So our next question here, it says Apple emails are composed almost entirely of tiled images, including basic items like title text and HR lines. Only paragraph text is typically actually text rather than an image of a text block. Is this the only foolproof way to ensure that emails will render correctly on all platforms? Mark, thanks for your question. I think Jeff can probably answer this one.
Yeah, that style of building emails comes with its own advantages and disadvantages. Yeah, the email will look the same in most clients, but on the other hand, you'll have to deal with image blocking and the problems that Outlook causes with sliced images. The truth is that an email will look different regardless of which technique you use, especially if it's being viewed on mobile or on a desktop. Personally, I embrace this and choose to code emails mostly in CSS and HTML instead of using image-based layouts. And then I just test to make sure that the email is going to be readable and look great everywhere.
I hope that answers your question, Mark. Our next question here says, it's from Heidi again. Does the spam filter remember the layout of emails? I.e., if I change a domain but keep the same layout, will this still be identified? Al, can we kick that one over to you?
Yeah, I'm not sure I totally followed the question, but I think I know the direction it's going, so I'll answer a couple of things. Each spam filter obviously reacts differently or has a different set of guidelines or a main purpose. So I think if you're just moving things around with a similar layout, I don't think that's going to change anything. You guys may have an opinion on that too, but generally speaking, I don't think that's going to set up any flags. Content, however, if you're changing the content and maybe using the same format, I could see that definitely making a difference because a lot of the spam filters are still looking at content. Not all of them. A lot of them are really focused on engagement and things like that, but content obviously plays a role. So, that said, major ISPs are using very different and more sophisticated algorithms than the smaller guys do. So it's kind of anyone's guess how they'll all react. Ultimately, for something like that, I think it's a pretty easy A/B test. So where you can send, half to one, half to another, or in a different way, and really just kind of see what happens from there.
That makes sense. Thanks, Al. All right, we've got several more questions here. We're going to try to work our way through all of these. And again, if you have questions, feel free to ask those. Hopefully we will be able to get through all of them. Our next question says, is there a good way to embed video, or is it still best to include a screenshot with a play button? Jeff, I think you're probably able to answer this one.
Embedding video used to be pretty easy, at least for iPhone recipients, which is often a large percent of people's lists. But the latest iOS updates have made it so that HTML5 video is no longer supported. So there are a few services that can help you do this because it is fairly complex. And if you are interested in that, I would recommend Googling video and email, and you'll get a pretty decent list. The easiest way is still the one that you mentioned. Just put an image in the email that has a play button on it and link that to an external page where the video is hosted. That's definitely going to be the most consistent way, but it won't play in the client.
Thanks, Jeff. Another question for Email Copilot here. It says, I don't have visibility today to Gmail's true deliverability because my ESP may report as delivered to Gmail, but Gmail may not have inboxed it and put it in spam. Is Email Copilot able to provide insights into Gmail inboxing? Al?
Sure. So I think what you're asking about is Seedless. Do we offer Seedless? And in the traditional sense today, we don't. Email on Acid has that, and we've had conversations about partnering with them down the road to add that signal into our system, because I think there's definitely value to a seed list, and tying it in with all the data that we're collecting is really powerful. So I'd say that's something that we're looking at doing, where we can infer what's going on with the data, add some seed list data to that, and go from there. But today we don't offer that specifically. So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question. It's a pretty common theme. It seems it's not the first time somebody's asked that question in this thread, where it seems like emails are getting delivered, but in reality they're not. So it's a tricky business to really track it, and I think leveraging as many tools that you have available to get as much information as you can is really the right answer here.
Thanks, Al. So we've got another question here. Are anchor links to navigate through email content bad to use? Also, will a long email using them just get deleted by a user anyway? Matthew, thanks for your question. Jeff, I bet you've got some insight on this.
I wouldn't recommend anchor links because they don't have very good cross-client support. So I would not depend on them for navigation if I were you. As far as long emails are concerned, that really depends on your content and your readership. Newsletter or digest emails with a lot of content can do really well if the readership is interested. Promotional emails that go really long often get deleted before the customer makes it all the way to the bottom. So I would just take a look at what your engagement is like.
That makes sense. Hope that's helpful, Matthew. Next question says, my question is, are there any guidelines for email designers in terms of spam? Al, do you have any insight into this?
Guidelines for designers in terms of spam. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure we're best suited for this question. You know, our focus is more on what happens after things are already out there, and content and things like that. Design, you know, obviously using something like Email on Acid, I think, to make sure that your design and your HTML and all that stuff looks right. You know, engagement is huge to ISPs, and if there's something wrong with your design and it's causing problems, users won't engage, or they may, you know, provide some kind of negative feedback to the ISP, like deleting it without really opening or looking at it. So I think from a high level, that would be my answer. I would think that there are tons of design guidelines online. I don't know, do you guys, Email on Acid, have any thoughts around this one?
Hey, Al, I think you're pretty on base there for what you were saying, you know, just in terms of putting it through the system and taking a look at it. Like we had covered earlier, you know, we can kind of catch if there are some content things that are happening that look spammy, but we know as well that, you know, spam filters now, and particularly getting to the inbox, can count so much on individual user behavior that can be kind of difficult to determine. So I think, you know, just following best practices in terms of email design makes sense, and running your pre-send spam test to see if there's anything that's tripping some of those red flags and maybe looking fishy, but otherwise that's probably your best bet.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, design can be a pretty broad word. I don't know if it's design of the structure in the HTML or design of, you know, the look and feel. Obviously, the latter is very much focused around engagement, right? The better the design, the better the look and feel and the flow, the more engagement you're going to get, and less chance of you actually ending up in a spam folder or somewhere else. So, yeah, there's a few different ways of looking at that question, I think. Absolutely.
All right, we've only got a few minutes left, so let's move on and try to wrap up these questions here and get to everybody, hopefully. The next question says, to EOA, are there any pros or cons to embedding metadata on images, or might that potentially trip a spam trap? Jeff?
I'm not aware of any pros, but as far as spam traps, this is pretty similar to the earlier question about the target equals blank attribute. It's the kind of thing that if you really are concerned about it, I would recommend running a test where you have all of your images with metadata, and then running a second test with everything the exact same except no metadata, and compare your results. If there's a drop in deliverability, that might indicate that it's something that spam filters are concerned about.
Thanks, Jeff. Our next question says, is there any evidence of sending simple plain text emails versus HTML email has any advantages from an inboxing perspective? Al?
Yeah, so I don't think we've run any direct reports on this one, but I can definitely take it as homework to have our data science team look into it a bit. It's fairly highly discussed question, but I would say there's a few things we're relatively confident about. First one would be mostly images and very little text is generally not treated well, so it's generally bad. Not having a plain text alternative when you're sending an HTML email is also kind of bad. As far as plain text versus HTML and text, that one's a little bit up in the air as to which one's going to perform better. But again, that's something we should probably run some analysis on our side to see if we see any difference between the two.
Thanks, Al. So our next question says, is using background images with HTML text over them not recommended? Arlene, thanks for your question. Jeff, can you give us some insight here?
I wouldn't say that it's not recommended. It will cause some issues in terms of development because background images are not supported by Outlook unless you use their special proprietary language called VML. So you'll have to write some special code to have your background image show up there, and occasionally that kind of code can complicate having the text overlay it if your text is also very complicated. But once you get it all coded and it's looking good, I don't think it should cause any deliverability issues.
All right. Our next question here from Ben says, will creative and unique alt text negatively impact deliverability? Al, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I guess when you're thinking about this, I would treat it like regular context in an email. Don't do what you wouldn't do in the body text. I don't know off the top of my head, though. I haven't heard of anything specifically where an alt tag caused a problem. Unless you're putting blatantly spam triggery kind of context inside of those. Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have any other thoughts on that one?
No, we agree. We don't think unless you're doing something questionable within that alt text that it should have any effect on your emails and on your deliverability. So we've got a few more questions and just a few more minutes here. The next question is thoughts on using emoticons in the subject line, any impact on deliverability? I don't think from our end there seem to be issues. Like Jeff was saying earlier, it kind of depends on what exactly that content is in your subject line, but we haven't really seen issues with emoticons specifically. Al, what about you?
Yeah, I don't think we've seen anything negative about this so far. Like anything though, if it becomes something that's used more frequently, there's higher likelihood that ISPs are at least going to start paying attention to it. But really, I think, if that emoticon is getting you more engagement, that might actually be a good signal. So again, because, the bigger ISPs specifically, they're really, really focused on engagement these days. So yeah, I don't know of anything negative or positive, honestly, other than if it manages to get your users to click more.
Absolutely. Engagement is certainly the name of the game. So two more questions we've got here, and it looks like we're about to run out of time, so we'll get through those. This question says, cloaked links versus the original links, will that affect deliverability? Al, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So what I would say is, link shorteners are obviously used by ESPs and they're fine. The important thing, at least one of the important things, is you want to use the same domain you're sending from for your links as frequently as possible. Bitly and other public link shorteners are a no-no. It's too easy to hide bad content behind those things. and spam filters don't like them. So I would definitely avoid those. Ultimately, I guess my answer would be use the shortener that your ESP has built in and white label it so that it's coming from your domain if you're using, if you've got that stuff set up. And I think that's typically the smartest solution.
Thanks, Al. So for our last question today, Matthew writes in and says, how can you explain to your clients or designers that their emails will not all look the same or that they won't be able to do what they had in mind? Also, are there any funny memes to send to them? Jeff, I'm going to let you take this one. I feel like it's a good one to wrap up on.
No, I'm not aware of any, but we should probably make some. So I'll email you some if I come up with any good ideas. As far as the clients, I would just walk them through a test results screen so that they can see in one place just how many variations there really are. That's a great question, though. Thanks.
All right. Well, it looks like we're about to run out of time. We certainly appreciate all of your questions today. I want to say thank you again for joining us. We are going to be sending out early next week an email that will have a recording of this webinar on it in case you weren't able to stick around for the whole thing, or you just want to listen back through again to see if you pick up any additional tips. We also, along with that recording, are sending out a checklist graphic, so you will be able to print that out, laminate it, put it on your desk, look at it regularly, and really kind of walk through the pre and post send process to hopefully really eliminate your anxiety around those emails that you're sending and make sure that you've got all the boxes checked and are ready to send out those emails. So we thank you again for joining us today. I want to say thank you to Al for presenting as well, and hope you all have a good afternoon.
Yeah, thanks, folks. This was great. A lot of great questions, too.